Some of the BTCC, gosh.
It's the biggest motorsport series in the UK and has been for a long time.
Look, I've supported the championship for a long time, as it has me.
I'm loving it. I mean, I'd love it a lot more if we was on the podium and getting race wins.
You know, it's quite literally a dream come true.
I think there's a couple of names that people never really heard of that are going to be, fighting for reverse grid podiums and things like that.
And, as we were saying as we were walking over here, I underestimated how good everyone is. Everyone on this grid is fantastically good as a racing driver.
Hello and welcome to the ultimate 2025 BTCC mid-season review, featuring so many of your favourite touring car stars, as well as insightful analysis and discussion from myself, Louis Hedge, a 19-year-old motorsport interviewer and journalist. I've done over 400 interviews now in my time, and I'm working very hard to make a career for myself in the motorsport industry, and in particular British touring cars. It's been a really great season so far. We've got plenty to talk about, lots of drivers to discuss, review and all that good stuff. So let's get straight into it and enjoy. Starting off our list of 2025 drivers is Ryan Bensley. Now remember, Ryan made a one-off appearance this season back at Snetterton, his local circuit, with Accelerate Motorsport, and what an opportunity for him to get to step up to British touring cars, which was really exciting for him. He stayed out of trouble, obviously had a lot of help from his teammates and the team around him, and he took it all on board and progressed nicely. And I think he'll be looking forward to get back on the grid sort of in the next couple of years. I think that'd be a good aim for him. So yeah, nice to see him make his debut and see a dream come true for him.
Local track, always wanted to do BTCC. Made sense when the deal came up with Team Virtue and Accelerate. So here we are. We're going to give it our best.
Next up is Nick Heststead, who initially wasn't looking like he was going to be on the grid, but after missing the first round at Donington, he couldn't resist. That second seat at Power Max sort of came available to him, and they got everything sorted. So yeah, he joined the grid again, and it's nice to see him back, to be fair. He brings a lot to the championship. He's working hard to sort of push the category forward media-wise, and he gives a good insight to fans and involves them in lots of different ways, giving them sort of insights into his race weekends and things like that. So he's been doing good, staying out of trouble. Had a bit of an unlucky weekend just now at Alton, getting caught up in a few incidents, but I know how much he'll be enjoying being back.
Yeah, it was a bit of a baptism of fire, not because obviously I haven't done it before. It was more that left-hand drive car, no testing, and we had getting the car up to speed took a lot of time, not just me, but getting everything working, frankly. So, it was always going to be treated a bit like a test day. So, but yeah, obviously loved it.
Next up in 26th is Nicholas Hamilton, and how good is it to see him back on the grid after missing the whole of the 2024 season and some of the year before, actually. It's so good to see him back in the BTCC, the category where he loves being in and sort of belongs, and you know, the reason he goes racing is obviously sort of a message that he brings as well, and I know how much he inspires so many people around the country. So I think it's really good to see him back in the championship, and he's been doing a good job.
It's definitely the place to be, but I wasn't sure whether I was going to be racing again. It was a very last-minute decision. Got the opportunity at the end of December, and just didn't know whether I was going to go for it or not. But I thought, if I can get the budget together, I'll give it a go. I love my motorsport. I love the BTCC. It does stress me out from time to time because obviously the championship is just so difficult, so tight, so close. But nevertheless, I'm very grateful to be here and really happy to be back.
Just ahead of him, making his debut at the weekend at Alton Park, is Finn Leslie, TCR rookie as well. I'm only making his debut in the TCR UK this year. Stepped up to the British touring cars. Shame obviously for race one, he couldn't really get out. He had an issue on the grid, but then stayed out of trouble sort of the rest of the day, fought through the field in some pretty tricky conditions, changing constantly throughout the whole day, and he scored some points in that final topsy-turvy race. So to actually stay on the road in that kind of race was good going, and to come away with some points was really good. So good for him.
Well, I had my ambitions set high for a podium, maybe for the reverse grid racing as we qualified where we did. But, to come so close so soon, it's always a big positive.
Just ahead of him is Michael Crease. Now, it's not something we want to speculate too much about, but obviously it was a shame he only did the first couple of weekends. In those, despite having literally no testing and sort of rocking up at Donington Park at the opening round, he still did really well, took it all on board. Obviously, it's a proven car now, the Hyundai, but obviously it's one he'd never driven before. But he did a good job in the first couple of rounds. Obviously, it was a real horror story what sort of went on with the miscommunication and whatever went on with Accelerate. Like I said, not something we want to be speculating about too much, but all I want to say is obviously it's such a shame for Creasy. Obviously a top driver, very underrated and talented in my opinion, and a fan favourite as well. So hopefully we'll see him back on the grid in the not too distant future. I'm sure he's already thinking ahead to next season after, whatever, and planning ahead. So yeah, shame for him in the short term, but we hope he'll be back.
It was mega, and that's why I'm here. Like, I might not be as quick as your Sutton or your Ingrams or your Hills, but I certainly make up for it on the fan side of things. And if we can come along and pedal in the top 10, then that's all I want to do, really.
A driver who's having quite a challenging season as he makes his return to the championship in 23rd place is Stephen Jelley, former race winner. And yeah, it's been a tough return for him to the championship. Obviously, he was in Porsche Carrera Cup last year, taking a year out, similar to actually the team he's joined in One Motorsport. So yeah, it's been a challenging season. I think maybe just getting to grips, not just with touring cars, but obviously with the Honda Civic, a car he hadn't driven before. And obviously, we've got to remember the team had taken a year out as well last year, like I said, so they're sort of getting back into the swing of things. So there's always going to be a few teething issues, I guess. But he's been doing this long enough to kind of, get strategy calls right with tyres and trying to stay out of trouble. But yeah, I think the car seems to have been a bit troublesome and playing up at times, which is obviously a shame for him. A little bit out of his control at times. But I think he'll have a strong second half to the season once they iron out a few problems maybe. But obviously, like I said, it was a bit of a surprise to see him come back to touring cars and with One Motorsport. A lot of people weren't expecting that, to be fair, after being in the Carrera Cup last year.
Yeah, same as me really. I was sort of looking for what was out there. Obviously, the team took a sabbatical last year, and I started talking to Josh. Josh was sort of saying all good things are happening. And you sort of think, oh yeah, whatever, surely it's can't be that great. But I thought, I'll go and have a look, go and talk to the guys in the workshop, and was really pleased with what I saw. It was just exciting stuff. Everything was gearing up. Good work going on the cars. All the guys there beavering away. So it's like it's a bit of a no-brainer, really. Get back involved, and it's been great.
Just ahead of him is Max Hall, who makes his BTCC debut this year as a rookie, and it's been a challenging start to the season for him. Not what he and his family and the team would have been after sort of a promising start, and they have a really good run of years in the support categories and minis and junior saloon cars a few years back as well. So yeah, it's been a shame he's been caught up in a few incidents and stuff like that. But you've got to remember, this kid, he's only 18, and if you're watching at home, typing on Facebook, giving him grief, what were you doing at 18? It's a big step up from the JCW minis, which he only did one season in it, but he did absolutely amazing. So the step up was obvious to go to touring cars. So he's learning. This is all good experience for him, even when stuff hasn't gone to plan. And all you have to do is, if anyone's doubting him, is look back on his career in the support categories and see his racecraft and how strong it is. So, a few teething problems going sort of on for him, I think, at the minute, as he learns the championship. But it's only a matter of time. He's here to stay. I think he's here to sort of fight for wins in the long run. But it'll come. There's a lot to learn, and the British touring cars is so much more difficult, I think, than people realise.
Well, Donington wasn't too bad. We scored some points, but I thought we could do more. Brands, we just got really unlucky with obviously was on our tyres in the first race, so we were pretty hopeless on our tyres, and then that happened in the second race. Not going to talk about that one too much. And then in the third race, it was looking like we were all good. We found a diff problem after we were repairing the car after race 2. Fixed that. Started from 25th last, obviously, because we didn't finish. Got back to like 14th or 13th, I think it was. Looking like we had the pace to get in the top 10 quite easily. And then our tyre exploded. So it really just won our weekend.
Just ahead of him is another one of his Unlimited Motorsport teammates in Dexter Patterson. Again, a bit of a challenging season for Dexter as he returns to touring cars after being out in GT racing last year. But he's like I said, bit of bad luck here and there, some car problems. Obviously had a great inspired drive in the third race at Alton doing the sort of tyre gamble, but he then got disqualified, I believe, down to ride height due to the tyre swap, which is a bit frustrating for him. But think back to Donington at round 1, his charge through the field after a disappointing qualifying, sort of fought through the field throughout the day. So I think as well he's another driver who can be expecting a little bit more from after the summer break. But again, it's another case of a really young driver sort of getting to grips with touring cars, and that can be easier said than done when you've got sort of the old guard, your Ingram and Sutton, who are so unbelievably quick. They know the championship like the back of their hand, which therefore can then make it a bit of a challenge for some of these younger drivers getting used to what is arguably the hardest and most unique championship here in the UK.
Yeah, pretty good to be honest, mate. We've got a lot of running in, which has been good because I think the last couple of pre-seasons I've done have been always quite short, whereas it's been nice to get good 3 or 4 days of solid running and to get a look about the car properly.
And in 20th place is Ronan Pearson. Unfortunately, just before the Alton Park weekend, he announced that he was pulling out of initially just that weekend, but now it seems it's going to be the rest of the season. He'd obviously been driving for Toyota Gazoo Racing, and it hadn't been the season he was hoping for at all. I would say on pace-wise, in qualifying in particular, Ronan had been particularly good. He was in the quick 6 at Donington. He'd had sort of flashes of these really fast moments that we'd seen throughout the last couple of years of him being in BTCC. But I think combined with the Toyota not being quite where it should have been sort of this first half of the season, as well as a fair amount of bad luck and issues and stuff like that, it's not gone to plan for him. And similar to Creasy, we were not going to speculate, obviously, him missing the rest of the season. We wish him all the best because I think we all know how good of a driver Ronan actually is when he's got the right equipment and when he's not sort of hindered with bad luck.
Yeah, delighted to have no expectation makes you a little bit more relaxed. So you can't be disappointed with anything. Round 1, you don't know where anyone's going to shape up. So yeah, making Q3 was always going to be in the back of my mind because we did it last year. So 5th this year, 5th last year. Yeah, it's a good start.
In 19th place is yet another Toyota, and that is Aaron Taylor-Smith. And again, it's not been sort of the start to the season that the reigning independence champion would have been after. It was kind of looking quite strong to start with, qualifying in the top 10 at Donington. But then in the opening race, a car problem sort of disrupted the rest of his weekend, and that kind of sums up the rest of his season. Thruxton in race 2, I believe it was, he was fighting sort of up in the top 10 in a reverse grid draw, ready for race 3, and a car problem plagued him. Again at Alton Park, even though the start to the day for him was alright, he climbed into the top 10 in race 2, just to then on the final couple of laps to have an engine problem, and that put him out for the rest of the day. So these things keep on happening. Typically it tends to be on the final lap, or the final couple of laps, which I can only imagine how frustrating that is for him. When to start with, early part of the season, the pace wasn't particularly there, sort of Brands and Snetterton, but then when the pace is there for him and he's fighting in the top 10, it seems like car problems is really plaguing him. So I can only imagine how frustrating that is for him. But he's always positive and he's always sort of pushing on and seeing what he can do sort of in the future. So he'll be hoping for a stronger second half of the season and hopefully some more consistency for him.
Absolutely. I feel like, don't get me wrong, the team are doing everything that we can to improve the performance, and you see it across the board with our 4 cars. We're probably not, we haven't quite been in that window of what we've needed, potentially maybe a little bit on power, but I feel more work has gone in the last 2 weeks than I've seen go on in 2 years of most teams I've been with. So I think it'll be, I feel we can really get the momentum back this weekend, and then all of a sudden it becomes easy. The crew and car and everything are superb, that I feel like it's just a matter of time.
And next up is yet another Toyota in James Dorlan, another one of our rookies for this year, and I've got to say, a real star of the season for me. A bit of a baptism of fire, first couple of rounds, getting used to things. But then there's, even back at Brands Hatch for second round, there was moments of sort of, you could see he was really progressing. Race 3, sort of climbed through the order, went under the radar a little bit. And of recent rounds, Thruxton and Alton in particular, he's been qualifying really strongly. Maybe not having the perfect or all-round good day, falling back in some of the races. Touring cars is very much up and down with how you might sort of finish in the race, especially in the midfield. You'll fight to get a place and then you'll lose 2 and then you'll go up 3, and it's very back and forth, especially like I say if you're in the midfield. So obviously as a new driver to touring cars, he's sort of learning that new sort of aggressive race style of the battles and contact and all that sort of stuff. But think back to back in the day, he was in the Clio Cup, and that sort of provided a very similar style of racing. So he's used to all of that, and it's nice to see a driver that maybe has been under the radar at the start of the season come through and have some really good performances. Like I said, particularly in qualifying, seems to be where he's really shining. And another driver that a lot of people, if they didn't follow the support categories back in the day, or maybe didn't follow other motorsport categories sort of in a wider sense, might not have known about James. And he's doing really well for his first sort of season in the touring cars. He's being really strong compared to sort of just ahead of Aaron Taylor-Smith in the standings, as well as obviously Ronan Pearson, who's been in this series a bit longer compared to his teammates. So yeah, he's doing very well.
Yeah, it's like I say, it's just a different dynamic. You need the pace, obviously, but then how you manage that over the race distance and looking after the tyres and staying out of trouble as well. That was something I knew I had to kind of learn over that first weekend, was where to concede a place and then where to fight. And I learnt that pretty quickly, and I think the years of Clio Cup racing back in the day certainly helped with that. So yeah, it's very chaotic, but very enjoyable.
Next up in 17th place is Sam Osborne. Another tricky season at times for Sam. He's still in the Jack Sears Trophy, so he's fighting for that one still. Had a couple of really strong rounds, getting almost into the quick six qualifying, but even still doing some good qualifying results. Snetterton, I think, must have been one of his best weekends to date. He always runs well around there, to be fair. But climbing right up the order, getting that tyre kind of gamble or strategy right while other drivers were on hards. He opted for the softs, which I know would have helped him out massively, but he still had to make that strategic call and keep it on the road and make the overtake. So although he had the advantage in that sort of sense, you've still got to get the job done, which people sometimes forget about in a really weird sense. So yeah, strong season for Sam. Obviously, he's had Rory Butcher, former race winner and championship contender, working with him, pushing him along. So it's been good to see him get some strong results with Napa Racing so far this year.
We're trying something new, and if you don't try, you never learn, and if you don't learn, you don't go faster. So yeah, it's going good, really.
Gordon Shedden is up next, the highest placed of the Toyotas, and how crazy is that, really? 16th is the highest Toyota so far. Like I said, it's been a difficult start to the season, but sort of Alton Park kind of turned it around a little bit for Gordon Shedden. While it wasn't a perfect overall weekend, it was one of those situations where he kind of had to fight back after a disappointing qualifying, being right at the back of the grid, fought his way through in race one, even though he was on the hard tyre, sort of stayed out of trouble, got that out of the way, had a great climb through to get into 9th, I think it was, in race 2, and then obviously reverse grid pole for the third race, had a nice lights to flag win, and he didn't have it easy. He could have very easily gone off the road because of the challenging conditions, and he had a lot of pressure in the early laps from Josh Cook, and then throughout the race from Jake Hill and Ash Sutton. Easier said than done to keep those two behind you. So he'll be looking to now sort of go into the summer break, finish the first half of the season on a high with that race win, and then sort of keep up the momentum, hopefully, for him, and get some good results. Obviously, Croft is the next one up, and then we've got Knock Hill, which he'll be looking to obviously perform well at his home circuit.
Yeah, it's great. It's a cracking championship. It's as buoyant as ever. It's going to be a little bit different this year without hybrid, so maybe that mixes it up a little bit, but I'm sure the action will be as good as always.
Getting into the top 15 then, we've got Senna Proctor in that 4th Accelerate seat, and considering he's only done 2 weekends being at Thruxton and this one now at Alton Park, he's done well to get there, considering how long he's been out of the championship. He last raced in 2021 with BTC Racing when that team was known as that, running the Honda Civic. That was a strong season for him. Remember, he won at Alton Park that year, and some great results throughout that year. But yeah, he's come back in, and I think he's possibly someone that could be on for a race win later in the season, if things go his way. Maybe make him the most of having more boost compared to other faster drivers, or a reverse grid or something like that. So yeah, strong results so far coming his way, consistently sort of in that sort of maybe lower half of the top 10, but kind of matching the likes of Chilton, Morgan, Smiley, Lloyd, and the other Hyundais. We've seen actually, particularly at Snetterton, at Alton, we've had those sort of other Hyundais in a row, sort of 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and then after that, if in race 2, for example, the top 3 will go on the hard tyre, they'll fall back, and then this train of Hyundais will come flying through. Arguably, I would say the best car on the grid this year. But yeah, Senna Proctor's been doing a good job, and he'll be pleased that he's been able to move into that seat earlier than expected, and he's someone I hope to catch at the next round I'll be at, which will be Knock Hill. Another Hyundai up next, same car, different team, the independently run restart machine of Dan Lloyd, and it's another challenging season so far for Dan. Very unlucky. Pace is definitely there. Alton was a real sign of that. Qualifying, he should have been up there, but then failed the ride height and got excluded from the rest of the session, which kind of then put him on the back foot and in a vulnerable place for the rest of the weekend. Obviously, a good charge in the first race at Alton, but yeah, overall it's been a tricky season for Dan. Obviously, going into it, he had real high expectations for the independence fight and title, and don't rule him out yet. Stranger things have happened. He is a quick driver, and if things go his way, he'll definitely be back up there. Pace wise, like I said, has been good for him. Croft is up next, like I said, and that's a strong circuit for him. He always runs well around there. He's had double wins there before. So yeah, but it's been a real challenge for him after going into the season with such high expectations, and like I said, the car and driver combination with the team, the pace is there, it all looks good, but he's just had so much bad luck and things like that, which is a shame for him, isn't it?
100%. I mean, the goal for us is to win the Independence Driver and Teams Championship. That's the first goal. I mean, along the way, whatever else happens, we'll see. The goal will be to get overall podiums and fingers crossed a win or two throughout the year, but everyone knows how competitive that championship can be. So yeah, a little bit of everything, but the main goal is Independence Driver and Teams.
13th place, unlucky for some, is Aidan Moffat, and again, that sort of sums up his season a little bit. So many things that, Alton, for example, he got tangled up with that De Leon Taylor Smith incident, which he shouldn't have been involved in. That was none of his business. He was the innocent party there. Snetterton, he had that problem with the boost that provided him with a penalty, which put him at the back for race 2, which then in that sense, if you then put at the back in the middle of the day, you don't have as much time to recover, so it's going to be very difficult. So yeah, obviously it's a shame. The one weekend where the BMWs were really strong, being Brands Indy, he made that mistake in qualifying, but then really cost him dear the rest of the weekend. So he'd be thinking, surely he should have got a win when each one of his teammates did end up on the top step throughout that day. So he'll be kicking himself a little bit by that, but these things happen, and it's in the past now, isn't it? So he'll be looking forward to the rest of the season. Knock Hill, another driver, that's his home weekend. The BMW usually runs well around there. Whether it will or not this season, we don't really know yet, because it's been such a mixed bag this year. So yeah, I would like to think he'll be able to get a race win before the end of the season. Silverstone, he always runs well at, in my opinion. Brands GP at the end of the year. So, yeah, don't rule out Aidan just yet. He's had some, even though, qualifying, he's always said isn't his strongest part of his business. His racecraft is really strong. He loves to charge through the field, and, although he probably doesn't want to be doing it very often, he's done it a fair few times this season from either disappointing qualifying results or, bad luck or penalties or incidents and stuff like that. So yeah, challenging start to the year for Aidan, but he'll be back second half of the season aiming for more.
There's a fresh lineup as well for WSR, obviously, apart from Jake. But it's great. I think we've all been getting on great, working together very well. Everybody's quick as well, so it's made it really nice actually. It's at a stage where everyone's doing their own things at the minute, because everyone's got a good pace. We can kind of go our own ways, and that means you can accomplish a lot more, because you can then look at what worked across the different cars and find something in the middle and cover a little bit of more ground. So no, it's been going good. Everyone's gelled together quickly, which we spend a lot of time together, so it's a bloody big bonus when you all actually get on as friends.
12th place just ahead of him, one of his West Surrey Racing teammates, Daryl De Leon, who made the jump up from Unlimited Motorsport up to West Surrey. What an opportunity for him, going up to one of the biggest teams, constantly learning, and he's had some bad luck. He's been caught up in some incidents. Obviously, he's been, there's been times where he was expecting to maybe qualify higher. Snetterton comes to mind, and then he got knocked out in session 1, for example. But yeah, that amazing weekend at Brands Hatch in race 2, got the tyre strategy right. Obviously had a bit of good luck, with Dan Camish's misfortune with the car turning off situation, but he fought through well there, and it's so good to see young drivers get their first race win. It had been a while since we'd seen that, to be fair, actually about a year actually at the time, because it was Pearson last year, the sort of last one, I suppose. So yeah, great to see him get that first win. He'll be after another one, but sort of since that great result at Brands, it's been a bit of a challenging few rounds with setup and the car maybe not being quite where it should be, but still a great breakthrough year for Daryl De Leon, a real star of the future. You think how young he is, and to be getting his first race win at this age, who knows what he can be doing in the future. So yeah, good for him.
Yeah, it was an amazing feeling. The team have done so much hard work to get the cars right, and hopefully this weekend's a repeat. But yeah, it was an amazing weekend at Brandon. It's an honour to be part of WSR's history-making weekends.
Almost breaking into the top 10 then in 11th is Mikey Doble, who finally got that debut win at Heststead in race 3, who he didn't have it easy at all. Ash Sutton putting on so much pressure, but actually it was the Ford driver of Sutton who made a mistake that cost him his chances of winning that race. But Mikey Doble, he hung on perfectly, did really, really well, and going into the season, that was his aim. After coming so close at Alton Park last year to winning a race, he lost it on the final lap to Jake Hill. He was really wanting to get a race win this year, and that was the aim. So it's really nice, to see a driver who had that ambition going into the season to secure that result in the first half. And who knows, another one might happen before the end of the season. So yeah, he did really well, and it just proved all those people giving grief to the team and the car, saying it was too old and uncompetitive. He's brought it up into competitive places, into the quick six. He's had some unfortunate moments with reliability. Thruxton springs to mind. He was comfortably in the top 5 there, competing with all the big names of this championship. But then, yeah, the car sort of let him down a little bit there. But aside from that, pace-wise for him has been really strong. And shame, actually, Alton Park was another round where he got caught up in some incidents with that big whack from Chilton, I think it was in the third race. So yeah, it's a shame, actually. A little bit surprised that he's not in the top 10, but like I said, when he's had that, those reliability issues and some bad luck with incidents, 11th, he'll be pretty happy with that, and be looking for more to try and break into that top 10 in the second half of the season.
I've said it, I keep saying it in these sort of interviews, that my 2 goals are to win a race outright. Just the one will do, but if we can get multiple, that would be lovely, and win the outright independence title.
Moving on to that top 10 men is Charles Rainford, another real standout driver for me this season, another BMW driver that got a win at Brands Hatch. Like I said, that one weekend where that seemed like the car to beat, massively strong. He obviously had high ambitions sort of rest of the season after that to try and sort of keep that momentum up, be a bit of a title contender perhaps, but it's not quite fallen that way. Like I said, with the BMW being a little bit up and down, a bit inconsistent, unfortunately for them. But he's been really strong, even in the races where he's been turned round. Another case of a driver who's been able to fight through the field, get his elbows out, and it's nice to see another driver graduate from one of the support categories. We've seen a few come up from minis with Ronan Pearson, Dan Ziedels and Max Hall, but not a nice change in dynamic of a driver making his debut to the BTCC from the Porsche Carrera Cup. He's highest placed of all the rookies, and I've always said how good the Porsche Championship, both of them are actually, the Sprint Challenge and obviously the Carrera Cup that Charles Rainford came from. Obviously he's still very much a fan of that category, tells me he always still watches the interviews I do with those Carrera Cup drivers that he obviously used to race against, but he's moved to the BTCC really not nicely, despite the big change. He's done well to make that transition, and he'll be pleased to have won a race it was only his 6th race. How crazy is that?
But yeah, no, I mean, fantastic weekend, really. Just absolutely blown away with what we managed to achieve as a team, and myself really as the Rainford family. It's I grew up into motorsport with my dad racing, and then to have all my family there and winning a race was just awesome.
Next up is Chris Smiley, and I've got to say Chris has been one of my standout drivers so far this season. Back in the Hyundai, a car he's driven before, so it was a sensible decision to sort of move on to the Hyundai for Restart Racing. A great investment for the team in such a strong car, but it made sense. Obviously Chris Smiley had driven the car before, so had Dan Lloyd a bit more recently, but yeah, Chris, a driver that maybe sort of last season went under the radar a little bit, and obviously he'd been out of the championship for a couple of years, obviously winning the TCR UK, and I think quite an underrated driver, but he's been just getting the job done, getting some good points, getting on the podium at Alton Park. He obviously had qualified on the front row, Maybe probably a little bit disappointed that he didn't quite get pole, but still a great job for the team, you know, considering they're only in their second season in the championship, getting on the podium again. The team's done really well in the teams championship, both drivers, although like I said, Dan Lloyd's had a lot of bad luck. You know, still racking up good points, which you've got to do in this championship. And another case of a driver who is on for a race win before the end of the season. I'd like to think, you know, pace is definitely be there. It's just whether they can get it all together. Obviously, there's been some weekends where the team have been a bit up and down, but Snet in particular was really strong. I think obviously the circuit suits for Hyundai quite nicely, but like I said, you've still got to get the job done. You've still got to get the qualifying lap. You've got to stay out of trouble in the races. So yeah, really strong season so far for Chris Smiley. Good to see him back on the podium again after quite a while. Obviously, like I said, gone and done other things. So yeah, good to see him get such strong results, both him and the team as a whole, which has been good.
Yeah, time, effort and a lot of money, you know, and we're very, very thankful for the investment of Pete Jones, you know, for getting us these cars. You know, we're very thankful for that. So yeah, I think we've got a great platform for the rest of the season. I think we've got something to build on. You know, I'm fitter. I feel like this year we're in for a good season.
Next up then is in 8th place is Josh Cook, returning to sort of his home team of One Motorsport in the Honda Civic Type R, a car he loves, a car he's had so much success with down the years. Been a bit of a mixed bag. Obviously, you're never quite sure, you know, how it's going to go with a team that's been out of the championship for a year or so. But he's had some real sparks of positivity, you know, getting back on the podium, some decent qualifying results, and he'll be satisfied. I think he'll be wanting more though. I think he'll be wanting to get more podiums, bare minimum, and like I said, get another driver who will be on for a race win before the year is out, I'm sure. You know, Alton was a bit of an up and down weekend. Thruxton was a real roller coaster for him. If the track wasn't you know, exhilarating and terrifying enough, you know, the weekend for him that started strong, pace was looking good, and then obviously qualifying all went wrong with a massive off. The team worked through the night until about 1 a.m, I think, to fix the car, for it to climb through the field. That was a great race for him at first one at Thruxton. Really exciting to see. I was trackside watching it, and it was awesome to see him fight through the field, and sort of reward the team with a podium and you know, a nice trophy and some good points for their championship campaign. So yeah, he'll be looking to win a race bare minimum before the year is out, and yeah, continue fighting for that independence title. Next up is Tom Chilton, one of the most experienced drivers on the grid, and I've got to say, a bit of a return to form for him after sort of a few years of being a little bit up and down, a little bit inconsistent, I would say. You know, he's won a race last couple of years, but I think he's really back at his best actually this year. Won on opening weekend at Donington Park, great commanding victory, and he explained, you know, since the cars have got rid of the hybrid battery, the cars are a bit more like how they were before the hybrid era, obviously, a bit lighter, a bit more nimble, and that's aided him with his driving style, and he's felt quick again, and I think he's a bit more confident in his driving. You know, and Tom Chilton, he'll be pleased with that. He'll be really happy, and it's nice to see him doing well. Obviously, he was actually the first Hyundai Accelerate driver to win a race this year, so he would have been pleased with that. And so yeah, he's been scoring well.
Cars to drive, but I've got to say, now we've lost the hybrid this year, I feel more racy again because the cars are more nimble. They're actually a little bit harder to drive, and I feel like that's a good thing for me with obviously all my experience. So I'm enjoying this year so far.
Another one of his teammates, Adam Morgan, in 6th place, who I would say has been in the form of his life actually. Really good actually result so far to be in 6th in the championship. Like I said, outscoring some big names, a lot of who have already won races. Another driver, I've been saying this all video, haven't I? Another driver who a race win he's definitely due one. He's been there or thereabouts, a handful of second places, and like I said, he's been averaging sort of that 5th, 6th, 7th area, which makes sense why he's 6th in the championship, if that makes sense. Thruxton, I think, could have been a bit of a missed opportunity. I think if perhaps the weather was dry in qualifying and not torrential, downpour, nightmarish weather, he would have been a bit higher. Obviously, got knocked out quite early on, I think. But Thruxton has always been a special circuit for him. He's always performed really well there. I think that's probably where he's won most of his races. So yeah, a bit of a missed opportunity perhaps there, but even still, you know, Brands, he was there or thereabouts, got on the podium. Alton was strong for him in that first one. So yeah, another driver who I think he'll get a win before the season is out?
It's been 4 years of rear-wheel drive, so there's just technique changes you've got to get used to. So the brake pedal, for example, in these you can hit them as hard as you want, and in a rear-wheel drive you've got to look after it, you've got to be careful with it. So it's that switching all around again and getting used to the rear end moving around, but not having to panic. That's what it's supposed to do. But yeah, no, it's been fine. It's come around faster than I thought it would, which is a positive thing. So looking forward to some more seat time.
Getting into the top 5 then, and it is reigning champion Jake Hill. Not the start to the season he would have wanted. Obviously, like I said, with all these BMW drivers, Brands Hatch, second weekend of the season was really strong for him. Won the opening race. Qualified, up at the front of the grid. But since then, Donington was a bit hit or miss, bit average to be fair. Mid to lower end of the top 10, fell back a bit, pace wasn't quite there, but, he coped with it well. And that seemed like a bit of a one-off when we then got to Brands and he was there on the pace with all his teammates, fighting at the front, and he was like, this is where obviously his championship's gonna sort of kick-start. But then obviously Snetterton, was pretty average for him. A circuit for the BMW has always run really well round. And it's kind of gone from bad to worse, really. Thruxton, again, a circuit with a BMW has had success, maybe not the same amount as all the Hondas back in the day, with Shedden and Neil and Cook of more recent years. But it just didn't go well at all. Seems like the car's down on power. Handling, it seems to be a bit of a nightmare. He had that big moment in race 3, which he obviously caught up with Ash Sutton, which for anyone criticising Hill, it was a mistake. It wasn't intentional. So yeah, shame to see Jake Hill obviously having such a nightmare with the car and setup, and it just seems overall pace and straight line speed and stuff like that. And Alton Park, again, is a circuit where the BMWs in the past has run really well round with the sort of stop-start nature of it. But, I think combined with the challenging conditions, which, the greasy track doesn't often suit the BMW. He obviously had a big moment in race 3 where he lost a lot of time. So, yeah, shame for Hill, but I think he's handling it well. And sometimes in motorsport, regulations or car setup or rules and stuff like that fall in your favour. And sometimes it doesn't. And in this case, and so far this season, it's not gone the way of Jake Hill and BMW. They'll be looking to bounce back and do a lot of work, I presume, over the summer break. But let's see, can he get back into that title fight? I think it's going to be a big ask, but he'll just be wanting to get some more race wins and get back on the pace more than anything, I think.
The grid is 100% stronger than it's been in the last couple of years, I would say, in terms of, we got Josh back in the Honda. He looks pretty competitive, obviously, from media days times as well. And we got the likes of, Camish and stuff, who seem to have really stepped up this year in pre-season testing at least. So, it's looking really close for the title fight again. Hopefully I'm still in with a chance. It's going to be great, and hopefully it's going to mean that from a fan's perspective it's going to be really really interesting and hopefully unpredictable.
Right, really into the top 5, and now in 4th, Dan Rowbottom. Unbelievable start to the season. Had some bad luck. Obviously, it's touring cars. Everyone's going to have that. Brands, he was a little bit off the pace. Of a weekend of what could have been. Sort of fell off. The pace, the ultimate pace, and couldn't quite get on the podium and stuff like that. But since then, won race 2 in Snetterton with a great battle with Dan Lloyd. Did amazingly there to really, I think, kickstart his season from then on. Thruxton, again, consistent throughout the day. Pulled off so many overtakes at the complex. He loved doing that all day, didn't he? And then to get a fantastic race 3 win. Brought him up to 3rd in the championship, which was nice to see him up there. Down in 4th now, obviously one of his teammates who we'll get on to has just got past him in the points. But yeah, Dan Rowbottom, form of his life. And it's nice to see after a couple of challenging seasons. Obviously he last won prior to this year in 2023. Last year was a complete write-off for him. And obviously it's been a big 12 months or so for him, sort of bouncing back after a challenging year last year, having major heart surgery over the winter, recovering from that, still being arguably one of the sort of most engaging drivers with fans, working super hard commercially and with his sponsors. But he'd said in the past, he focuses so much on that, maybe he needs to focus more on the racing as well. And I think he's got a lovely balance this year, getting so many good results, a couple of wins already. So yeah, he'll be really proud of what he's done so far this year, and he'll be looking to keep up that momentum.
The problem in this championship is, I've been in it a while now, and if you start looking too far away from where you are, you just disappear up your own backside because you don't actually know what they're doing. You haven't got a clue what tyres people are running. especially in FP1, FP2. You don't know what boost allocation they have. They might be running the full 15 seconds, for example. So, like, that's everybody. I try not to look too much what other people are doing. Obviously, if there's someone that's shining out, you have to go, well, that car's quick. We need to try and figure that out. But for the main, we've got 4 good drivers in the team, 4 good sets of data. So that's our comparison point.
Into the top 3 then is Dan Camish, and again, it's nice to see a driver who has had some bad luck in the past have some great results. Again, should be perhaps a few points higher maybe in the championship. Obviously lost. He could have got a win at Brands Hatch in the second race, but obviously had that issue with his car that caused him to not finish. But yeah, obviously he's had a win, but he's been consistently sort of in the third place in a lot of these races, behind Sutton and Ingram or whoever else is ahead. So yeah, he's been consistent, racking up the points. He has been a driver that struggled, unfortunately for him, on the hard tyre. We've got this new rule that if you get on the podium in the first race, for race 2 you're going to be on the hard. So at Snetterton he really fell down the order, and I can understand his frustrations with that sort of being punished. For getting a good result to then fall down the order. So, almost seemed after the first race at Alton, he was happy with the result, but almost dreading the second race because he knew what was coming his way. Also at Thruxton, he lost out of getting a good result because Sutton and Ingram, sort of came together on that. I think it was lap 1 or 2. I think it was second lap. And they both cut the chicane, got a massive advantage, and Camish did the right thing, stayed on track, stayed on his line, and then lost out because of it, which, you've got to feel sorry for him. So, yeah, that was a real shame. So, arguably, I think should be maybe not higher in the championship because Ingram and Sutton have been a class of their own, as I spoil who's in the top 2. But I think he deserves maybe some more points of where he is compared to the big gap that he has compared to Tom Ingram.
I think ultimately we always sort of start out with relatively high goals. I mean, we've we're all here to be champion. We can all say that. But I think I always set myself a target of making sure that top 3 is I think a very good achievement in the championship, and I think top to be in with a chance at the end. We do a thing at Silverstone prior to the second to last race where they take sort of the photos for the end of the season to sort of see who's in the challenge, and I always set myself a goal of ensuring that I'm in that photo shot because that shows that you're in with a chance of the title. And ultimately in touring cars it's a long season with a lot of luck, a lot of ups and downs to come. You want to be there with a chance at the end because you never know. I know more than most. It ain't over till it's over, and you just don't know which way it's going to go. But I'd like to think on this current form, how the car feels and the way we're heading, that we're going to be in a very strong place for this season.
In second place, Tom Ingram, driving better than ever. He was a good part into the season before he'd actually won a race, to be fair. It wasn't until Thruxton, the fourth weekend, that he actually won a race. But that didn't matter to him because he was being consistent. He had plenty of second places, plenty of thirds, being in the top 10, even on the hard tyre. He wasn't falling down maybe as much as some of his rivals. So he's done really well this season, as you'd expect. One of the real veterans and front runners of this championship of the last few years, chasing that second title that, perhaps long overdue. But he's had some great races so far. So yeah, he'll be proud of what he's achieved, particularly how consistent he's been.
I'm not. If I'm honest, yes, you obviously want to be winning races. Obviously, that goes without saying. But at the same time, it's the position at the end of the year that makes the big difference. And to get there, you've got to score points along the way. So we've had 5 out of 6 podiums so far, which is really, really good. The car's feeling amazing at the moment. It feels absolutely fantastic. So yeah, super well balanced, doing everything I want it to. So. I feel in a really, really confident place. It's a nice place to be.
And the final driver is leading the championship, Ash Sutton. Not really a surprise, to be fair. I guess you could have seen that one coming. It was going to be one of the two, actually, Tom Ingram or Ash Sutton. They've both been so strong. Ash Sutton has won more races than anyone else. I think he's won four races so far this year. And, he started off the season in style at Donington with 2. He got another at Thruxton and then obviously won race 2 at Alton. We're seeing, actually, he's winning race 2 quite a lot, actually. Whether he's sort of, finishing just off the podium in race 1, getting on the soft tyre then for race 2, and then charging past all the drivers on the hard tyre. So yeah, he's been strong as you'd expect this season. In a class of his own, arguably the best he's ever driven. That Ford, you see him do some things in that car, and it's unbelievable. His car control and his traction out of the corners, and it's just great to see a driver working so well with his engineer and his team and his car. So yeah, really exciting stuff for him. He'll be very proud, and like I said, high expectations. He wants that 5th title, doesn't he? So there you have it. That was the ultimate British Touring Car 2025 mid-season review. You can't get much better than that. Nice analysis, insightful discussions, as well as hearing the drivers themselves, because they're who you want to hear from, aren't they? So it's been a great year so far. We've got lots more to look forward to, both on the track as well as here at Hedgeworks Motorsport. Plenty of driver interviews coming up and all sorts of behind-the-scenes content that you're going to be wanting to look out for, especially if you're a BTCC fan. Any touring car fans are going to love this channel, so make sure you do subscribe for the very best BTCC and British Motorsport content. For anyone new around here, my name's Louis Hedge. I'm a 19-year-old motorsport interviewer and journalist. I've done over 400 interviews. How crazy is that? Mainly across BTCC, but all your other favourite British motorsport categories like British GT, Minis, Porsches, and even dabbling in some other forms of motorsport such as British supercarts and other things like that. So, like I said, make sure you subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed hearing from both myself, my thoughts of the season so far, as well as, like I said, all your favourite British touring car stars. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time. Goodbye.